My goodness, this is beautiful. Welcome. We are the Saugatuck Douglas Area Indivisibles, a local, nonpartisan grassroots group, part of the national indivisible movement of millions of everyday people working to protect and strengthen democracy. And man, do we have everyday people here today. We believe we must stand up, show up, and speak up because people power democracy. We believe that when people come together, real change is possible and that there is strength in numbers. And look at these numbers tonight. Give yourselves a hand for showing up. So how many of you have been to one of our Indivisible meetings in the past? Could you raise your hands? Oh, great. How many of you are new tonight for the first time? Yay for you. Thank you so much for being here. We welcome new voices and grow stronger as we organize building communities. We unite across our differences to protect and strengthen democracy that truly works for everyone. We stand against authoritarianism. We stand for the Constitution. We fight for progressive policies and support leaders who reflect our shared values. Together, we will keep democracy inclusive, accountable, and powered by the people. We are indivisible with liberty and justice for all. We have a wonderful program for you tonight. We began with the revolutionary music of Carsey Blanton. I don't know if you heard the music, the song. She is a globally known singer-songwriter, and we are very fortunate that she is beginning her world tour here in Saugatuck at the Council for the Arts as a benefit concert for us. All of the money raised will go to one of our main focal points, supporting those who are marginalized by this administration, particularly the immigrant community, threatened daily by the malfeasance of ICE. Our program, Todos Bienvenidos, in Spanish and in English, all are welcome, spans 4 counties and provides rapid response and assisted to affected families, including housing, food, transportation, legal aid, and other necessary support. All of the money that is raised in that concert will go toward this project. The music is great. You will love it. Please buy tickets. And if you have a little business or you just like yourself and you want to sponsor a place in the program, you can do that. And you can talk to David Moore, who's in the back. He's raising his hand up back there. If you want to see, what does he look like? There he is. Thank you, David. Our second major focus this year is preparing for the 2026 elections. As part of that initiative, Meet the Candidates. We have a great candidate tonight, Abdul El-Sayed. Yeah. Next month, when we meet at our regular third Tuesday of the month meeting, May 19th, we'll have another candidate for the Senate, for the Michigan Senate seat, Mallory McMurrow. So you can make comparisons for yourself. Our third major focus is education for democracy. Last month, we heard an expert speaking about fascism. Tonight, we will examine what keeps our elections safe and how local communities work to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity to vote. And that's the second half of our program. I hope that you'll stay for the whole evening until 8:30 because it's really going to be a fabulous and educational event. We begin the evening with the state of things from our resident political essayist, Christy Allen. When Christy finishes, Craig Hudson will introduce our speaker.
Hello. All right, let's get into it. Trump extended the removal of sanctions on Russia. In return, Russia reportedly shared intelligence about United States operations with Iran. Russia, once strained from its invasion of the Ukraine, is now rebounding, profiting from higher oil prices and expanded sales. Iran benefits from those same rising prices and could gain even more by charging tolls to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, here at home, prices are rising. And by the end of April, it is projected that the U.S. will have spent between $25 and $47 billion in this war of aggression. So how is it being paid for? They're planning on cutting federal financial support here at home to essential programs for farmers and rural businesses, weather forecasting, coastal protections, broadband access, schools, and infrastructure. Programs that build stability are being sacrificed to sustain conflict. At the same time, military action has escalated at a historic pace. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has suggested that if Iran falls, the oil pipelines could be routed under the Arabian Peninsula directly to Israel, bypassing choke points like the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal. That could shift enormous control over global oil into Israel's hands and essentially stealing it from Iran. So you have to ask, was the goal ever just nuclear non-proliferation? Or has it always been about oil? Because time and time again, that seems to be the pattern, even when the cost is measured in civilian lives. There are also troubling reports about how this war is being conducted. Allegations have surfaced that the United States military is doing double tap strikes. This is hitting a target and then striking again when the rescuers arrive. A tactic widely condemned as a violation of the Geneva Conventions. And then there's all the misinformation from Trump. Repeated claims that the Strait of Hormuz has been opened yet again, contradicted by US intelligence and Iran itself. Yet each time, there's suspicious market activity. Reports suggest that just minutes before one of these announcements, massive bets were placed on oil prices falling, bets that paid off big. If true, that means that people close to power may be profiting off volatility tied directly to presidential statements. That's exploitation played on the backs of service members and civilians alike. And finally, some perspective. Years ago, President Obama was criticized for a deal with Iran for $1.7 billion in exchange for curbing nuclear development and securing American hostages. That deal was torn up by Donald Trump. Then he decided to go start a war with Iran, and now he is floating the idea of the US paying Iran $20 billion to end the conflict that he started. So much for the art of the deal. I will leave you with this palate cleanser after all of that, and some beautiful words from an Israeli activist, Ma'outzin, who works alongside a Palestinian activist, Aziz Abu Sarah. We are those who learn from history. The only way to reach a sustainable peace is through dialogue. Look at him in the eyes. Start feeling his pain. Listen to his trauma, to his challenges, and acknowledge them. Not necessarily to agree, but acknowledging his suffering and pain. And then start working together for hope.
I've been quickly asked if any of you have a seat next to you. There are people standing in the back. If any of you have a seat next to you, could you raise your hands, please? So people who are standing, please come on down to a place where you see people raising their hand so you can locate a seat. That would be lovely.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm sure you're all here to get ready for Earth Day tomorrow, right? It's a beautiful night. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight. For most of you, I don't think I really need to say anything, but I think there's a lot that we learned just from his brief bio here. Dr. Abdul El-Sayed is a physician, epidemiologist, and public servant running for U.S. Senate, born and raised in Southeast Michigan. Abdul has spent his career making government work for people. He rebuilt Detroit's health department after bankruptcy, then led Wayne County's Health, Human, and Veteran Services Department, serving 1.8 million residents. In those roles, he secured free glasses for kids, removed lead from schools, expanded access to Narcan, took on corporate polluters, and launched a program to cancel up to $700 million in medical debt. A union member, Rhodes Scholar. How much time did you have there? And University of Michigan alum, go Spartans, I'm sorry. Abdul is running to build a government that works for regular Michiganders, not billionaires, and he's here to share his vision with us tonight. Round of
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're all too kind. Thank you so much. I always just start with the message, if that's okay. Money out of politics. Money in your pocket. Medicare for all. Now that you all know the chant, we'll do it one more time. Money out of, money in your, Medicare for. Saugatuck, it was lovely. I'll see you. My name is Abdul Al-Sayed. I am clearly running for office because I've got a name that was tailor-made for U.S. politics. Y'all don't think so? But it just shouldn't be this hard. Shouldn't be this hard to afford a second bag of groceries. Shouldn't be this hard to work the same job tomorrow that you worked yesterday. Shouldn't be this hard to take your kid to a dentist or to see a doctor when you get sick. Shouldn't be this hard to pay your taxes like we just did and know that that money is being spent on your kids and their schools and your health care rather than dropping bombs on other people's kids and their schools and their hospitals. Shouldn't be this hard. Now, I was never supposed to run for office. My parents gave me an 11-letter first name that has sounds that come out of parts of people's throats most people don't know they have. I think if my immigrant parents knew that I would have run for office, they'd have just stayed in Egypt. Like, it's not a possible thing to do over there. I wanted to be a doctor. And I want to be a doctor because of my own experience growing up. I was raised by my dad and my stepmom, Jackie, who's a daughter of the American Revolution from the middle of the state of Michigan, a town called Gratiot County, or a county called Gratiot County, town called St. Louis. And my dad really wanted me to know where it was that he came from, so they would ship me off to Egypt as soon as I was old enough to travel by myself with whatever family was going. And I'd spend my time in Egypt with my grandmother, smartest, wisest person I've ever met in my whole life. Never got to go to school. She was the 9th of 14, born and raised in a time and a place where girls like her, however brilliant she clearly was, didn't get to go to school. She herself gave birth to 8 babies. 2 of them died before their first birthday. An aunt and uncle I never got to meet. She was a giant of a human being at 5'1". In the 15 hours it would take me to get to Egypt, I would cross a 10-year life expectancy difference. I didn't have to go to Egypt. I could go 15 minutes from where I grew up, south into the city of Detroit, north into the city of Pontiac, and either way, I would cross the same 10-year life expectancy gap. And I want to do something about that, which is why I wanted to be a doctor. Now, on my way there, I went to the University of Michigan, go blue. I got a national championship that begs to differ with that go green. Just put it out there. But honestly, I'll just tell you something. I went to grad school in England, and I had this mentor of mine. He's like, so you went to the University of Michigan State? I was like, I looked at him for a minute. I was like, yeah, something like that. And I got some really bad advice on my last day there. I was the valedictorian of my class, and I had the privilege of giving the student commencement speech. Now, the only reason anybody went was to listen to the main speaker, who is a now disgraced former president named Bill Clinton. I give my speech, and then President Clinton gives his speech, calls me out in his speech. My dad claps for me for the first time in my whole life. And then after the speech, he comes up to me and says, son, why are you going to medical school? Which is not a question anybody asks you when you're going to medical school. And the first thing that came on my mind was, I'm brown and Muslim. It's just what we do. but also I love science and I love people and this is how I want to serve. And he said, that's great, but you got a gift for communicating. And maybe someday you'll run for office. And I looked at him for a minute and I just laughed. I was like, Mr. President, I don't know if you saw my name. People like me don't get to run for office. And he kind of chuckled and walked his separate way. That was 2007. 2008, I watched a guy named Barack Hussein Obama run for and win the presidency. It was the first time I ever saw myself at all reflected in politics. I remember watching that 2004 speech that he gave at the DNC. And I said, you know, his dad immigrated from Africa. My dad immigrated from a different part of Africa. He had mixed parents. I was raised by mixed parents. He has a funny name. I got a funny name. He's tall and skinny and I'm short and thick. But I said, you know what? I filed that away. I went off. I was a Rhodes Scholar, did a PhD at Oxford in the UK, and then finished med school at Columbia in New York. And I'm finally doing the work that doctors do, which is really about asking and answering two questions. What's wrong and how can I help? And too often I kept realizing that the answer to what was wrong had a lot less to do with all the physiology I spent all this time learning and learning again, and a lot more to do with pathologies in our politics. The air we breathe, the water we drink, whether or not we get to walk in our communities without being the victim of somebody else's violence, whether that's a neighbor or the state itself, whether or not you can even see a doctor when you get sick. And I realized I want to do a lot to take on that set of issues. So when we all graduated medical school, I took a very different turn. When my classmates went off and did residencies like normal people, I went into public health. I promise you my father did not clap at that decision. I got the opportunity to rebuild Detroit's health department back in 2015. I was 30 years old. I was the youngest health commissioner in a major US city. And my job was to rebuild a department that had been shut down when the city was going through bankruptcy and the state came through with emergency management, forced it to shut down a 185-year-old health department in a city with a higher infant mortality rate than my father's native Egypt. We rebuilt it around the well-being of kids. Across my work, both leading Detroit's health department and then leading Wayne County's Department of Health, Human and Veteran Services afterwards, we did things like guarantee every child a free pair of glasses delivered at school within 2 weeks of a vision test. The program's done 50,000 pairs of glasses across the state now. We took on some of the biggest polluters in our state. So if you were to drive, maybe not from here, but if you were to drive to Ohio, not that anyone should ever drive to Ohio, but if you were to drive to Ohio, you would cross the city of Detroit, you would pass on 75, you would pass the skeleton city, right? It's smoggy, smells like someone did something sad in the car. That's Marathon Petroleum. The biggest polluter and the most polluted zip code in the entire state wanted to raise their emissions of sulfur dioxide, despite the fact that the EPA had already said there was too much in the air. We forced them to invest $10 million of their own money to reduce their emissions when they had wanted to increase them. After the Flint water crisis, we had every school, daycare, and Head Start tested for lead in the water. First 68 schools we tested, 19 tested positive for lead. I helped to rewrite the state's lead policy after Flint. We put air quality monitors all over Wayne County. We put Narcan, life-saving anti-overdose medication, for free in vending machines in 100 locations across our county. We built a program to provide new small businesses free health insurance. And when we found out that Wayne County ranked number 8 for medical debt nationwide, we set aside $7 million to erase $700 million of medical debt. It's the biggest medical debt erasure in Michigan state history. Now, I'm never going to forget the day. It feels like 10 years ago now. It was like a year and a quarter ago when this administration froze federal funds. Y'all remember that? So I'm sitting in my office in Wayne County looking at all the line items they've just frozen. WIC, food on the table for moms and babies. Federally qualified health centers, the last line of healthcare for people who cannot afford it. Vaccines, all frozen. And just then I get a notification on my phone that after his long and storied career, our current U.S. Senator Gary Peters is not seeking re-election. And I had to ask myself then and there, where is the fight for the public's health now? I'm going to tell you something crazy. If I were to be elected, I would be the first Democratic doctor to serve in the U.S. Senate since 1969. I'd be the first ever public health official to serve in the US Senate as far as we know. And given all that RFK Jr. is doing, we probably could use one of those right about now. Literally, he's the guy who goes swimming in Schitt's Creek. I mean, like, I never thought I would imagine the day where like the health secretary is musing about doing lines of coke off a toilet seat. And then using it as an argument about why you shouldn't get vaccinated. I'm like, bro, I just don't think they make vaccines for that. Like, they probably should. Anyway, I've run for office once before, right? And I know what this takes. Now, you all might remember I ran for governor back in 2018. Some of y'all might have supported me. If you did, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. But I was 32, never run for office. I had bad advice from a former president. I said, I said, I'm going to go big or I'm going to go home. I went big and then I went home. But in the process, I earned 340,000 votes. I was 2 to 1 more efficient in dollars per vote than the governor, 3 to 1 more efficient than a guy who's now a US congressman who finished third. And I got outspent 7 to 1. DTE, Blue Cross, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure I didn't get elected, which, by the way, I wear as a badge of honor. And I said something at the time that folks weren't quite ready to hear. That's this. Donald Trump is not himself the disease of our politics. He's just the worst symptom of the disease of our politics. The disease is the system that allows big corporations, billionaires, special interests to buy and sell politicians in ways that leave them rigging the system against us. It's the reason we pay more for the stuff we buy. It's the reason we get paid less for the work we do. It's the reason we watch as our tax dollars get misappropriated abroad to drop bombs there rather than to build schools here. And so we're running a campaign to do 3 things, which you all already know. Get money out of, put money in your, pass Medicare for, there it is. So what does that actually look like in practice? I am the only candidate, sadly, running for US Senate as a Democrat or a Republican who has never taken a dime of corporate money to run a campaign. And to be quite honest, I just think it should be illegal. You should not be able, as a company, to buy our politicians. It shouldn't be possible. And I want to ban it. Number 2, what does it mean to put money back in pockets? Well, we live in an era where we watch this economy push out billionaires, and the average person can't afford to see a doctor. There is no coincidence in the fact that we live in a moment with the lowest union participation in American history. I believe in unions. I believe we need to make it easier to build or join or form a union in every sector of American life. And that means we've got to pass the PRO Act. I also believe that in this era, maybe we could tax billionaires their wealth. Because here's the thing. If you tax a billionaire at 8%, you know what they still are? Still a billionaire. Their kids are going to be rich. They're going to be okay. I think they could pay their fair share so that all of our kids could go to good schools and they could walk on good sidewalks, they could drive on good roads, and they could get good health care. So I think we got to tax billionaire wealth. It means standing up against the corporate consolidation that is eating our lunch when it comes to everything from using a cell phone to going online to getting a flight to seeing a doctor. And that means stepping up the Federal Trade Commission and making sure that they can police mergers and acquisitions in ways that protect our consumer rights. And it means ending the blank check subsidies that we send to foreign governments abroad to buy tanks and bombs over there rather than to buy school books and healthcare over here. And then in the richest, most powerful country in the world, I'm really proud of the work that we did on medical debt. But medical debt shouldn't exist. $225 billion of medical debt. That is more than the GDP of the majority of US states should not exist. I think we need to abolish it and finally guarantee the right that has yet to be guaranteed in this country of healthcare through Medicare for all. And I'm going to talk about two other issues. Because I went to Minneapolis at the height of Project Metro Surge. I wanted to see what it looks like when our government lays siege to a city in our own country. I got to tell you, what I saw was harrowing, but I also saw heroism. I saw people standing up for the first time and saying, you know what, I voted for that guy, but I'll be damned. I'm in a church, I'm sorry. I will be darned if I allow this man to break our Constitution. I saw people blowing whistles for their neighbors, alerting them to what was coming. I saw the best of America, even in the moments of the worst of America. And I'll be honest with you, I've run government agencies. I understand what happens when a culture of rot sets in to an agency. And even back in 2018, you could have seen where this was going. Make no mistake, ICE is not about immigration. ICE is not about the southern border. I mean, I went to Minneapolis in January. It was -2 degrees. I was not on the southern border. ICE is about normalizing paramilitary force against the very Constitution with the subtext of immigration. So ICE cannot be reformed. ICE cannot be retrained. ICE has to be abolished. And then there's the matter of this ridiculous war. For 40 years, Benjamin Netanyahu has been trying to get an American president to fight this war. And the only reason that people pay attention to what Benjamin Netanyahu wants is because we've got a very, very large super PAC that spends $100 million a cycle to manufacture a bipartisan consensus using MAGA billionaire money on both sides of the political aisle. And in Trump, Netanyahu seems to have finally found a man dumb enough to spend billions of our taxpayer dollars to fight a war that has only served to raise our gas prices and create a global energy crisis. So let's be clear. We have to understand that this war is illegal and unjustifiable. There is no world where, as a Democrat, you should be talking about the illegality, but then also talking about potentially voting to fund the war that you are calling illegal. This is not a procedural issue. This is a moral issue. And I understand that when we call out the likes of super PACs like AIPAC, a lot of folks get uncomfortable. But I want to be clear about something. I love and revere Judaism and the Jewish people. I also love and revere Palestinian people. I also love and revere people. And so we have a responsibility to uproot a system that tells us that we should be continuing to write checks to a government that has now pulled us into a war after conducting a genocide and on top of that conducting apartheid. And I say that not because I hate anyone. I say that because I love all people equally and would not like to see my tax dollars being used to wage an illegal, unjustifiable war, subsidize a genocide, or backstop apartheid. That should not be that hard to say. Now look, I understand I'm not supposed to run for office. I literally told a former president as much at my college graduation. Okay? I'm the wrong color. I pray the wrong way. I got an odd name. I know all the reasons why I'm not supposed to run for office. I absolutely get it. And I'm sure you've heard the whisper campaign. Abdul's great. But his name's Abdul, though. How's he going to win? Number one, if you're not going to vote for me because my name's Abdul, you're not voting for somebody named Haley or Mallory either, as long as they got a D behind their name. You're not voting Democrat. So I'm not losing votes that other people would win because my name's Abdul. Think about the middle voter. Who is that middle voter who's like, but his name's Abdul, I'm out. That's not how this works. If for you, my name is a big issue, you probably voted for Trump 3 times. And I promise you, you're probably not voting for a Democrat this time either. But here's the bigger issue. This race is bigger than me. It is bigger than my name. It is bigger than one U.S. Senate seat. For far too long, they've told us that we cannot fight for the things we need and deserve. This is too much of an important election. You got to wait 2 more years. And then 2 more years roll on. Not this one either, 4 more years. You wait 4 more years and you're never actually getting the things you need. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you what you cannot have and should not fight for. I understand that winning the Senate seat is not just about holding the seat if you're going to do the exact same thing that anybody else would have done with it. The question in front of us now is, how do you use a U.S. Senate seat to advance the goals that we have for the world we want to hand off to our kids and our grandkids? And I'll tell you, for me, it is personal. I got 2 little girls at home. I don't see much of them. I'll tell you a story. I have a 3-year-old at home, and she's hilarious. I don't get to eat dinner with the family very often. And I hadn't had dinner with my family alone for like a week and a half. And the night before, we had some guests, and we were teaching our daughter that when you have guests, you should thank them for coming. And so she was, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And then the next day, I'm having dinner with my family, and my daughter pulls off. She said, Baba, thank you for coming. But those little girls, they're ethnically half Egyptian like me, ethnically half Indian like their mom, where they get their looks, thank God. And they're 100% American. And they're growing up in an America where they have fewer rights than their grandparents who immigrated here had. And those grandparents, they took a bet on an America big enough for them too. Those ideals rung true. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, should say people, are created equal. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. All of us have people that we're going to hand this place off to. And we're going to be asked, either explicitly or implicitly, what did you do when you lived through that history? And I want to be able to look my daughters in the eye and say, I fought for what you deserved. And nothing less. And that is in America where corporations and special interests don't tell us what we can and cannot have. That is in America where every single person in the richest, most powerful country in the world does not have to ask, how am I going to get the healthcare I need today? That is in America where you have a right to a union and you can make community together because you're not so worried about whether or not your meal comes at the cost of somebody else's. And if we are not willing to advance a democracy where at least we can have that, then what is the point of winning the seat in the first place? I am not here playing not to lose. We have to learn how to play to win. Because at the end of the day, what we are winning is a future that we know we can hand off to our kids that is worthy of their dignity. That is what this was about in the first place. That's always what it has been about. And so we have an opportunity in this moment to stop taking second best. So if everything is okay with you right now, life is good, you feel comfortable about the future, I'm not your guy. If you feel like the best we can do is just sit in the seat to do exactly the same things that Republicans would have done with it because now is not the time, I am not your guy. If you want somebody who's going to go to Washington, D.C. to fight like hell for these communities, for all of our communities, for the right to be who you are, for the right to see a doctor when you need one, for the right to join a union, for the right to know that your tax dollars are going to be spent on you rather than destroying somebody else's life, then maybe I am. My name is Abdul Al-Sayed. I hope I can earn your support. Thank you. Thank you so much. Y'all too kind. Seats are comfortable. Sit back down. Come on now. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We got questions and answers. Sit down. Come on. We got the fun part hasn't even started yet.
Okay, we've got just a few minutes to take a couple questions. If someone would like to stand up and ask, okay, in the back. Hello.
Say something. Something you need to be aware of is this is being taped. It is being broadcast now. So as you ask your question, just be aware that you might be seen on the internet, okay? Just to be aware.
Oh, no, it's done.
I sure will. Hi,
Hey.
I came all the way here to tell you this and to ask you this, if you'll give me just a minute of your time. I'm Kayla. Nice to meet you. I consider myself a democratic socialist, but since October 7th, I have felt a bit politically homeless. I have found that the rhetoric surrounding the aftermath of October 7th is harmful to my community because people have a hard time separating the actions of the Israeli government from the Jewish people. I've never been to Israel. I have no feelings towards Israel. I have no family in Israel. Yet in many democratic socialist circles, I've been called a colonizer or a Zionist just because of who I am, having nothing to do with Israel or the government of Israel. And the fact that I'm even admitting that I'm Jewish here on the internet in this forum is very uncomfortable to me. I saw your speech, the Michigan State Endorsement Democratic Convention, and here tonight, you also said the same thing. You consider the Jewish people your brothers and sisters, and the Palestinians your brothers and sisters, and that the only way forward in this conflict is through love and war, not bombs and tanks. Thank you. It is truly the reason I am voting for you, because you said that. It was the first time that I've heard someone in the democratic socialist circles humanize both groups so perfectly, and obviously I could not agree more. My question to you is this: will you commit to continuing to redirecting rhetoric surrounding Israel-Palestine in this humanizing way? And will you also advise your fellow democratic socialist leaders to continue to make the clear distinction between the actions of the Israeli government and the Jewish people, as well as the actions of Hamas and the Palestinian people? And again, truly, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Kayla, thank you so much for the courage of your question. I really appreciate it. Question for you. I'm gonna go a different direction. You know, I grew up having to explain my grandmothers to each other. One of my grandmothers was illiterate, despite being the smartest person I ever met. Never got to go to school, raised 6 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment. She used to cook over what was the equivalent of a Bunsen burner. Her meals were phenomenal. And then my other grandmother was a nurse who trained at Hurley Hospital in Flint, raised her 3 kids in a Midwest bungalow. And these 2 women could not have imagined one another's lives. I was grateful to be there when they both met each other. And I had spent so much of my life explaining them to each other. And here's the crazy thing about it. They made me feel the same way. When your grandmother gives you a kiss on the forehead and tells you she loves you and makes your favorite meal, whether that's meatloaf or koshari, you can look up koshari. It's done with the same love, same reassurance. And only now can I kind of appreciate what that's like with my own little kids. There's a thing that happens in your soul, I think, when you look at your kid, because it awakens something about what the future means to you. And I know that whether you're Arab and Muslim or you're Jewish, that feeling is the same. I grew up, between tribes. I was never ever really a part of any one tribe. I always had a big asterisk on me, right? Even in Arab Muslim circles in the United States, I had a white stepmom, right? Clearly, I'm not white. And so I always tried to find that least common denominator of our experiences. And it turns out the least common denominator of our experiences are not about a skin color, not about how you pray. It's more about like what you hope for or what you pray for. It's more about that feeling that you get when you talk to the people you love the most. It's more about that like soul humming when you're like in community with people and enjoying their company. And that is true for everybody. And there is this approach that I think we take to a lot of these conflicts, which is to say that one group's humanity is worth more than another group's humanity. And that's why I always try to start with the idea that one's position should always be about trying to uplift that foundational human aspect of living that exists for all people. Might look different ways, the foods are different, the experiences are different, the songs and dances are different, the remembrance are different, but they feel the same way. And I want you to know that I hear you and I see where you're coming from there. It must be super frustrating to be assumed to think a certain kind of way as a function of your ethnic background or your faith background. And trust me, I know. I get it. But but it is a shared source of pain, right? And I think what we all want to obliterate in this world is a notion where any one group's pain is more important than others, and where we think we know what somebody else is thinking and we think they think we're less than, right? And I think as we approach this question, it's about the principles that bring us to the question. And for too long in our country, there has been this effort to extend the definition of anti-Semitism to include a foreign government and their leaders. And it has been manufactured by a super PAC that exists specifically to create a bipartisan consensus about this question. And then anyone who would second guess that is then told that you must hate a certain group of people. But actually, to ask that our tax dollars be spent on our kids is about loving our own kids. And to ask that our tax dollars not be spent to destroy other people's kids is about loving kids. And I think those two things are really important principles. And I hope that we can always bring that. And I'll tell you that the second biggest recipient of foreign military aid from the United States is Egypt. And I'd like to start there, because I don't pay my taxes so other people get bombs and tanks. I pay my taxes so that our kids get good schools and good healthcare. And I think if we focus on that principle and continue to remind people why, I think we can make it forward. And I also say this, in all of my interactions and engagements with the Jewish community, I have said, if you open the door for me, I will walk in. If you invite me, I will come. We may not agree on the question of Israel, but we will always agree on the question of anti-Semitism, because nobody understands as much what it's like to be discriminated against because of one's faith as someone who is also discriminated against because of one's faith. And I think our communities would do well to focus on those things that we share together. Because when I see little Jewish kids, I see my own daughters. And I hope that when people see my daughters, they see their kids. And if we could live in that kind of America, I think we'd solve a lot of the challenges that we have.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I just wanted to say I appreciated how you ended your talk to us, because you said, maybe I am. And those are like powerful words where I grew up in America. Saying maybe I am is in a Christian way is like saying I am. And I know that's not your intention, but it illustrates how hard it is to say those words. To say I can lead. And I see that. I just appreciated that from you. I did. And then also a comment. You said having an asterisk on your head. I just wanted to say, I know what that feels like. And it's hard. It's heavy. And I just want to say, I'm sorry you had that experience.
And I'm sorry you did too. You know, there's been this pretty profound effort on the part of people who want to divide us to organize in the Arab and Muslim community against LGBTQ rights. And I've always been someone in the Arab and Muslim community who has asked that we rise to the level of loving all folk, and also recognizing that even if you may not understand how some people use their rights, the minute you assent to someone taking someone's rights is the minute you assent to somebody taking your rights. I was a junior in high school when 9/11 happened. And I remember going from being a olive complexion kid with a funny name to being a very particular kind of olive complexion kid with a very particular kind of funny name. I remember for like 3 or 4 years, I got this thing called the quadruple S on my boarding passes, selected for secondary security screening, which is this humiliation ritual where at the plane side, while everyone else is entering the plane, They do a full search of all of your stuff. So when you're a brown dude and you're about to be on the plane with a bunch of other folks and they're searching your stuff, you're like, I swear I'm not. Like they're searching my stuff, like, right? But so I know what it's like to be under the bus, right? To get thrown under the bus, both by your government and by people who live in your communities. And when you spend time under the bus, you start to realize that nobody particularly likes to be under the bus, right? All of us want to be on the bus, not under the bus. And so you start to develop a certain kind of empathy for other people under the bus. Like you look over, like, how'd you get here? And it turns out that the very same people who throw folks like me under the bus, I've never known the experience of being queer or trans. I've never known that, but I have known the experience of being Arab and Muslim. You start to realize that like the minute people get thrown under the bus, there's a shared agenda around it. And I think all of us who've ever been under the bus owe it to each other to lock arms and get on the damn bus. Okay. Say like 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. She'll give me 1 minute. All right. They're gonna like hook me out. Okay, I'm gonna play me out. But if I've said anything that's been inspiring to you all today, I do hope that you'll get involved in the campaign. This is a campaign built on a hope for a future where we actually build the things that we need and deserve together. If you are interested in joining, I hope that you'll go to abdulforsenate.com/volunteer to sign up to volunteer. I also hope that you'll consider making a contribution, $5, $10, $7,000, whatever you can do. I don't take corporate money, so I rely on money from good people, but I hope you'll consider that. Also, the highlight of the evening is actually what's coming next. There's going to be an incredible panel featuring one of my favorite, what do you call somebody from Saugatuck? Saugatuckians? Saugatucks? Glenna DeJong about election security. I do hope that you guys will stick around because it's going to be very informative, and we all know we're going to need a lot of that election security moving forward, or not, right? But like, where are we and how do we think about this? So you're going to learn a lot more in this next panel. It was an honor and a privilege to be with you all today. I'm so deeply grateful for all you've done to show up. I know it's not just showing up here, it's showing up every single day, both before this and after this, to protect our democracy. Democracy, we pay attention to the election part, but scholars who study democracy say it's three things. It's the election part, but it's also freedom of the press, and it's this third thing called civil society. And civil society is people deciding to come together in organizations freely around the things that they believe in. And you all are exercising that every day. And even if they try to come for the elections part, it's going to be the civil society and the freedom of our speech that is going to protect our election. And we're going to need a whole lot more of that for the next 3.5 months, the next 3 months after that, and frankly, for the next 2 years and into the future. So thank you for all that you do, Indivisibles. Thank you. I'm so grateful. Thank you all for having me. Thank you very much.
So I had the best seat in the house because I got to watch everybody's face. It was great. It was great. So we're going to move on to our panel discussion on voting security. And for that, we've assembled a great local panel. Do your microphones work? No?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's too low.
Well,
Hello.
I'll introduce them now. To my left at the end is Kathy Brockington. She's the election inspector for the city of Saugatuck. She's worked on elections for more than 14 years and has served as chair of the precinct and a worker in Saugatuck and Manlius Township. In the center is Glenna DeJong, appointed member of the Allegan County Board of Canvassers and an elected chair for the next 2 years. And next to me is John Helmerich, Saugatuck Township Treasurer and Board Commissioner. I can't see the screen, but is the hit it, Aaron. We're going to discuss these areas with our panel, who will answer some pointed questions about our election security. And we'll start with John tonight, because he's right next to me. And the first topic is voter registration. John, please describe the voter registration process in Michigan for us.
Voter registration. Yeah, right. I will. But
That's good.
I have a couple comments to make first. I just want to put this in perspective because we've got representatives. Obviously, I'm township and you're county, I guess. County. And you're the city of Saugatuck. So by state law in Michigan, general law townships like us, your board of trustees are elected and they have to be partisan. They have to run with a party identification. Cities have charters. Most cities run nonpartisan for their council people. So there's just a couple differences. So that's why I, as an election official, can participate tonight. And also by state law with townships, the treasurer and the clerk are elected. And they can hire deputies to help them do the full job. But that's also different in cities. A clerk and a treasurer are hired staff people. So I just wanted to add that. I've also been on the Township Election Commission, which decides on many aspects of each election for 8 years now. And I guess 8 years on the township board. So having said that, the first issue is just to kind of remind everyone, because I'm sure everyone here is registered to vote, but once upon a time you may not have been. So, where is it? You have to be a U.S. citizen to register. You have to be 18 years old by election day, Michigan resident for at least 30 days by election day, and not currently serving a sentence in jail or prison. Most voters register in person, and the most common way is to come to your local city or township clerk's office. You can do online registration, but that must be done 15 days before election day. Various forms of ID are required and or accepted to register: Michigan driver's license, federal, state, or local government issued photo ID, a U.S. passport, military ID, student or tribal ID card. And if you don't have that with you when you come into the office, you can fill out an affidavit, and then you have a few days to return with those documents. The other thing that changed a couple of years ago now, when driver's licenses are given out, usually at age 16, you get registered to vote. You're pre-registered for when you turn 18, unless you opt out. I'm not sure why anyone would opt out, but they're allowed to do that. So moving on, the state, under the Secretary of State, creates this very important system called the Qualified Voter File. And that keeps track of who's cast a ballot, who has a ballot in their possession as they're sent out by the local municipality, who's been sent what we used to always call AV for absentee ballot. Now we most often call them mail-in ballots, because anyone in Michigan can request and vote by mail. And there are software guards that block election workers from giving a ballot to a person who already has balloted, has voted rather. Everything is numbered and cross-referenced, and it's quite an amazing system. And importantly, the QVF itself does not record how someone has voted, just that they have voted. So we have certain eligibility requirements in Michigan. Age, well, that's federal, to vote at 18, and then the different registration forms. Now, the Secretary of State, once the QVF is put together, shares this with the local clerks. A lot of control of the election process is with the clerk in the city or the township or the village in some cases. Let's see. Some of this is so detailed. They also track all the mail-in ballots. Everything has a number that has to cross-check. So there's a system that if someone got a mail-in ballot and then showed up to vote in person, the system would catch that. And I guess someone else was talking about the electronic poll. Yeah, there's another step, but this is all governed by the QVF. That's very important from the Secretary of State. Let's see. So moving on to another function, and this is where the election commissions in each what?
No,
No,
that's,
this is election inspectors / workers.
yeah.
Technically, they're called election, well, the terms are interchangeable, an election worker or an election inspector. These people are, they come in, they volunteer and say, I want to be involved. The election commission, working with the clerk, goes through all the applications. We know how many people have applied and how many we actually need. We've needed a lot more recently because last election presidential cycle, we had 9 days of early voting that had to be staffed. Now, not every election requires that, but there's a need for, I'll talk more about the need for the election workers later as well. So, and there has to be equal representation of Republicans and Democrats. And when you are chosen to be one of these inspection workers, you take an oath. You take an oath to the state of Michigan, to the federal Constitution, and everyone has to sign in on the poll book, which will be talked about more in a second. You go through a pretty severe 8-hour full day training session to be cleared to do this work. And then you get a certification from the county clerk, and you're certified for 2 years. So if you want to keep volunteering or participating, you have to train, partly because the laws, there's always so many changes in the laws, and that is coordinated by the county clerk. Let's see. So there's representation from Republican and Democrat. The other types of things, people that can show up at the poll, there are credentialed poll watchers and poll challengers. Anyone can come in and say they're there to challenge, and they can watch in silence. They can't interact, but there's this area for them to watch what's going on. Whereas the credentialed poll watchers have to register with their state party, and then that list, those names are given to the municipality to allow the poll watcher to be in attendance. And let's see again. And then so this to me is, I think, one of the most positive things about the whole process is every step of the way there's transparency and there's public access. This is Michigan state law. So our meetings of the election commission, when the three of us meet with the deputy clerk a few weeks before an election, they're posted, they're open to the public. We test the voting machines, tabulators as they're called. It's called the public accuracy test to make sure they're actually counting how many ballots go in, open to the public. Like I said, transparent public access. And then back to the QFV for a second. Only the clerk or an inspector, only a clerk can make a change or correction if sometimes is caught like a double registration or something. The inspectors are only there to read only. So if I may just quickly, I wanted to share some numbers because I think this is really interesting. In the township, Saugatuck Township, we have about 2,800 registered voters. And last presidential election, our turnout was 70%. 50% of our voters just over 50% did by mail, AV or mail in. And this is also important, especially for someone like me. If you're on the ballot in a given year, so the year when the board are all up for election or re-election or the Parks Commission, none of those people can work that election, even if they're certified. So again, I think that's another positive protection.
Thank you. John mentioned briefly the machines used in that we use here in Allegan County. Kathy, do you want to review the actual
Sure.
machines?
It did work. Does it work now? Thank you. I'm sorry. It was working before. You've heard this before on the news, but Allegan County uses Dominion equipment. That doesn't mean it's bad. That only is the brand name. Dominion, the tabulator that we have is made by the Dominion company. It is an optical scanner. So all it does, like for high school tests, where you do multiple choice, it goes through the machine and the machine reads whether or not the marks are in the spaces that they're supposed to be in. And then the ballots all go into the bin underneath. It doesn't have any memory other than 1, 2, 3, 4, it counts, that's it. And if there's not a mark, or if the mark is not in the right place, it won't count it. So that is our machinery in Allegan County. Some voters can choose an electronic ballot marking machine. It's called a voter assisted terminal. And you may have noticed that not a lot of people use it. It's set on a desk, usually to the side a little bit, and it has a monitor and it has a keyboard. What it does is it blows up the ballot, and it can read it for a person if they want to wear headphones. It does, the keys are Braille, so it will read the ballot to a person who needs to have the ballot read to them. So it makes voting accessible to anyone regardless of their handicap. The person inserts a card in that has their ballot on it. The ballot is shown to them, the complete ballot, and then they make their marks on with the electronic equipment. And then when they're done, that tabulator prints out a piece of paper that has a big QR code on it. And that QR code is their whole ballot and all of the marks. And nobody can read it except the tabulator. So it's great secrecy if you want to keep your ballot secret. And it is a nice thing to have for people who need it or who want it. All of the paper ballots are stored in a locked storage container that is the bin underneath the tabulator until after the close of the polls at 8 o'clock at night. And then when we are closing the polls, that's when we take the pieces of paper out of the ballot. And by then we don't know what anybody's paper is because they're all not marked with anything except the ballot markings. Our local jurisdictions, most local jurisdictions have policies that forbid voting tabulators from being connected to any internet at all. And every time election materials or equipment go to a different person, it has to be documented. It's like police evidence. It has to be documented that this person had it, then this person had it, and this person had it. So when you see those things happening on TV, you should hope that there's an evidence train of, I'm sure the local clerks are recording where that stuff is going. But, there's always a question in your mind in these days. Ballots and equipment are sealed with tamper-evident seals. When we're done, when we have put all the ballots in a ballot bag and we seal it with a seal, and if it has been tampered with, it is so obvious that the police can be called because it is very obvious. Nothing, even all the machines are locked. After you do the tests to make sure, the accuracy tests and everything, all of those ballot tabulators and everything get a seal on them that says they are secure, they're ready to go. And then those seals are cut at the end of the night after the polls have closed. So we know that nothing has been done to those those tabulators during the entire time of the election, because the seal is there from the accuracy test that was done 3 days ago. So it's all sealed and secure. Between elections, when the tabulator is not in use and when the ballots are being stored, they're in a secure facility locally, and they can only be used, not at all used, but moved or whatever, by the local clerks. So there's not anybody else. Even election workers have no access to ballots when the polls are closed and the ballots are locked up in the ballot bag. When a voter inserts a ballot into the tabulator, the machine counts only the valid marks on the paper. The machine gives a notice that the voter is successful. And that machine does not keep any record of the ballot beyond tabulating those votes onto where they're supposed to go. And it's just a list of, and not even a list, it's a total of numbers for each race. So it's very secure and very anonymous. Your vote is only your vote.
Which leads to, which leads to the question of audits and recounts. So Glenna would like to inform us on that.
This ensures that.
I'll use this one. So I've racked my brain how to make this interesting, and I came up with zip. But my commitment to you is that I'll make it clear. So audits and recounts are two different things, but they're both very important things that happen to have double checks.
Mhm.
So both provide double checks on election data and votes. So again, there's security built into this system. Audits are something that are controlled or done by the Allegan County Clerk's Office. And they do them routinely after May and November elections. And they don't do them with every precinct, but they randomly select a number and they go in and actually do hand counts of the ballots. So the ballots are saved, they count, and who voted for who. Those hand counts then are compared against what Kathy talked about, the tapes that come out of the voting machines that have the totals of votes, and that electronic poll book, you know, when you come in and they have to look your name up and all of that, and they say if you voted. So they compare those two. And in every instance, 100% of the time, in all these audits, 100% of the data matched. So no discrepancies. Now, those are audits. Recounts can be asked for by any registered voter in the county, because we're talking about Allegan, or entities that think that there may have been some impropriety happening somewhere, okay? But please don't ask for one, because I'm on the Board of Commissioners and would have to count all those votes. But one of the safeguards against that is there is actually a charge for somebody to do that. So I think maybe I've been involved in one of those. And those recounts do the same thing, but these are instead of hand counted by the Allegan Clerk's Office, they're counted by the Allegan County Board of Commissioners. And I will talk about the Allegan County Board of Commissioners in a minute, but every county has one, and it has 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Or Board of Canvassers, what did I say? Commissioners, Board of Canvassers, sorry. How do we get on the Board of Canvassers? The county parties, both Republican and Democrat, give their suggested names to the Board of Commissioners, and then they appoint the people. So there's always 2, and you'll hear that theme over and over again. There is bipartisan oversight on all of these steps. So if there is a recount, we're all sitting there and we're watching that recount. Just another example from Allegan County, in 2022, there were statewide groups that called for recounts of some of the proposals that were on the ballot at that time. I don't know which ones those were back in 2022, but you know, there was some concern. So they targeted numerous precincts in Allegan that they thought where some of this malfeasance was happening. So actually, that recount took place in Allegan County, and the Board of Electors people from Lansing actually came over and helped oversee that. And at the same cycle, the Allegan Clerk's Office did 5 audits of different precincts. So in total, they hand counted 14,000 ballots. In front of the public, this is all public, anybody in the public can come, the media can come, and of those 14,000 ballots, only 1 vote changed hands. So I'm pretty confident that these elections, these voting machines work as they should, and that difference was only 0.007%. So when people say there's rampant fraud, there's not. And I've seen data that this is very similar to, national data where they've done recounts and audits, and they basically get the same thing. So, is that clear? Was it fun? Oh,
It's fun.
Okay, that pretty much gives us an overview of the machine count, but what about mail-in ballots and those issues?
Oh, well,
Start with.
we can all answer that.
Yeah. Vote by mail ballots are protected by state rules and procedures that determine how they have to be handled. And they specify who can help the voter, how the person can help the voter. That's who can help, how a person can help, and who can return a ballot, and how the ballot must be returned. So there are quite a few sticky wickets with AV ballots, but if you read the directions, be calm, take your time, you too can do an absentee ballot. It's not a big deal, but there's a lot of stuff that you have to do. And you have to put your ballot, if we would really like it, if you'd put your ballot into the little secrecy sleeve that they put in there for you, so that when people are processing the ballots, we don't see your ballots when we're ripping open the envelopes, because we have 395 ballots to open in 5 hours. And it's a busy day of doing AV ballots, and I do that a lot in Saugatuck. So with another person from a different political party all the time. The mail ballots must be signed on the outside of the envelope. And if you accidentally forget to sign your ballot, the clerks in this jurisdictions will go out of their way to track you down to get your signature so that your vote can count. It's not like, oh, he forgot to sign it, so doesn't count. No, they go out of their way to find you, to get you to sign it so that your vote counts. But please try and remember, and if you help someone, if you assist someone, I should say, in their voting, make sure that they sign the outside of the ballot. And if you are the assister, you need to sign the ballot. Envelope, not the ballot, sorry. You need to sign the outer envelope. Now, signatures, you say, well, what about signatures? Well, anybody is eligible to vote. My sister, a few years ago, had a devastating stroke, and her signature changed, as you can imagine, dramatically. And there were elections coming up, and she wanted to vote. So what I did was, I said, okay, what is your signature now? Put it on this paper, write it. And it was an X. And I took that to the clerk and I said, this is my sister's signature right now because she had a stroke. And this is what's going to be on her ballot. And the clerk said, okay. And when my sister's ballot came with an X on it, it was counted. In the next election, her handwriting, shall we say, had improved vastly, so it was almost readable. So she signed a new piece of paper with her current signature, and I took that back to the clerk downtown, because she lived in town here, and said, okay, this is my sister's signature now, and this will be on this ballot. And then when I brought her ballot in, which was signed with my name because I assisted her, and her new signature, no problem. So just be aware that anybody can vote, no matter what your dexterity is. And if you know beforehand, then just bring a sample of your signature if it's changed. It's not an issue. The signature must be there. That's the issue. AV ballots can be mailed back or they can be brought into the clerk's office before election day. And this is something that you must pay attention to this year because of circumstances, shall we say. So if it gets to be close to the election and you have an AV ballot and you want to make sure it gets counted, go to turn it in to your local clerk at the city, the township, or in Douglas.
Or use the Dropbox.
Or go to the drop box at the city clerk, county, not county.
Township
clerk,
hall or city.
or the Douglas.
We
drop
all
box.
have Dropbox.
Yeah, they all have drop boxes. So,
Very secure.
and your ballots are very secure in those drop boxes. So make sure that you do that. Let's see. AV ballots are stored in the order and processed in the order in which they are received. And they are kept in the office with the clerk all the time when you're, like now she's got a box downtown. And when somebody turns in an AV ballot, it goes right in her box and she doesn't let that out of her sight. Somebody else, if Jamie has to be away, then Sarah's there and Sarah knows where the box is. And they, those ballots are supervised very carefully in all the clerk's offices. 2 election inspectors, one from each party, work together to verify the list of received ballots first. Then we open the envelopes, but we don't take anything out yet because we are always counting. We only work with 10 ballots at a time because this is where processing can be full of errors. One time we had an election, it was the Obama election, and we had, for the city of Saugatuck, we had over 600 absentee ballots. And we had a whole bunch of new people working. And at the end of the night, we were so far off, we did not balance at all. It was really bad. Well, at one point, and I forget if that was at midnight or if it was later, we went through all of the AV ballot envelopes again to check and see if there were ballots still in envelopes. And sure enough, we found ballots that had, because there were so many things that people were doing, they had mistakenly left a ballot in an envelope. So that was a double check for errors. And because we have to balance at the end of the night. Nobody can go home until we balance. Or unless, if we can't balance, we have to have a pretty darn good excuse and we have to write it down in the poll book. And we have to sign all of our signatures and give all of our phone numbers. Because when the Board of Canvassers looks at the poll book, if they have questions, we could be summoned to Allegan to answer those questions to the best of our ability.
We're
Running out of time, I'm sorry. Sure. The election inspectors are trained and certified for 2 years. So on Thursday, I'm going to Hopkins for a 4-hour training. Documentation at every step is critical and everything is supervised and nothing is done with one person. It's all done with 2 people. Great.
Thanks. I'm going to talk about what happens on election night once it leaves the municipalities. And I got something exciting for you. Yeah. When it leaves there, ballots or the totals tapes and the statement of votes, they're duplicated and one goes in one sealed ballot, one goes in the other, and they're driven to Allegan County Clerk, right? One goes to the clerk's office and they check that sealed container is still sealed. They open it, they take out the electronic votes, and that's when they get uploaded to the computer. So when we're all sitting there at night waiting, that's what happens. They're unofficial at that point though, right? Because we still have to, at Board of Canvassers, have to double check everything. The other sealed envelope goes to the probate judge, who also looks at the seal, sees that seal matches the paperwork, so somebody didn't take it off and switch it in the meantime. And that's great. And once that happens, they both go into a sealed vault and they stay there until we as Board of Canvassers come 2 days later and retrieve them from the vaults. Okay. So now when we get them out, we have to check that they both match and nothing has been switched out or changed. Exciting, huh? Yeah, wow. So these canvases, again, we have 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. Sometimes we bring in extra people who are sworn in for big elections. And can you imagine going through, how many do we have? It's like amazing. 28, I think we have 28 townships and 8 cities in Allegan. So we have to go through one by one all of these poll books and checklists, and it takes like 5 to 6 hours or 5 to 6 days, like 6 to 8 hours a day. It is a thankless, boring job, but somebody has to do it. And I'm one of those somebodies. So we have 14 days to complete that. And then once we see that there have been no problems, if there are, we call people in and they relook at them. But once there's no problems, we certify it. And all those results are then driven to Lansing. So that's it.
One element that we want to go through too, that's part of the long-term security is how we can all get involved in our election process. And John is going to speak to volunteers.
Thank you. See, it's a lot more complicated than you might have thought. Before I do that, I do want to throw out 2 kind of factoids, which I find very fascinating and relevant. We talked about when audits happen. Just so you know, in the state of Michigan, a municipality is required by law to keep on site and locked up every ballot that was cast in any election for 22 months. So for example, when someone starts talking about auditing an election that maybe is 5 years ago, those ballots will no longer exist. Now it does vary by state, but that's the law here, 22 months in case there is an audit called or a challenge. And then this one, statewide, I just want to say this, in 2024, the presidential election, 5.66 million people voted, and there was a complete audit of every vote that year, primarily looking to find about if non-citizens voted. And out of 5.66 million, they found 16 of those ballots. So that gets exaggerated at some point. But now, community involvement. And we've touched on some of this, but the best way, if you're interested, if you love politics and elections like some of us do, I mentioned earlier, we discussed election inspectors / workers. They're trained by the county clerk. They're paid positions. They're often called volunteers because they volunteer to get involved, but they are paid. The pay is set by the election commission, and then they have to go to the training, as I said. And if you're interested in something like that, whether you live in one of our 2 cities or our township, just go in and ask the clerk to get on the list. We're so lucky. I'm sure it's the same in the cities too. In the township, we have way more trained election workers than we need, which is great. And then when that happens, we often send someone who's been trained to another municipality. Ganges Township, Manlius Township, they have trouble getting enough. We're much more politically active and civic minded in this area. So that's something you can do. We talked about being a challenger. That's the tougher one to get. You have to be registered and you apply to the state Democratic or state Republican Party to become a challenger. I think in the times, the 8 years I've been on the board and all the elections, I think we've had challengers come in twice. Happens more often, I think, in bigger cities. Poll watchers, that's no training, no registering. You show up, there's an area cordoned off where you can watch, but that's really all a poll watcher can do. I've been a poll watcher in the past, and one year I was sent to Grafskip Fire Department to watch in a Lake Town election. But it's an interesting way to see how everything works. And I think, let's see, is that? Yep. Those are the ways. And not counting, of course, being registered and voting in every election. And this year we have a May election, which is the school millage. The primary in August, we'll pick our candidates from both parties for governor and senator. The ones that were picked over the weekend at the state convention, they've been picked by the delegates to the convention, but the governor and senator are picked by you. And then in November, the big one, who's going to lead our state for the next
Yeah.
4 years.
So I think that brings us pretty much to the end of our program but if you have a question.
She needs a mic.
I just wanted to give a shout out that to make sure that you are registered to vote. You can go on vote.org or you can go to the state government, but just to make sure, it took me less than a minute to make sure that I am registered to vote still. And I know that sounds silly to think, oh, I registered when I was 18, but they're just finding that some voter rolls are being cleansed. So just, out of curiosity, I suggest you make sure you're still registered to vote. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that. I'd like to thank our panel tonight and your interest in our secure and election process.
So tonight we heard an inspiring candidate for the Michigan Senate seat. We also learned the ways in which our local neighbors and community members, and we're looking at some of them right there, help to keep our elections safe and secure. All this nonsense about needing to pass the SAFE Act actually is attempting to stop people from having access to the polls. Our elections are really safe, and the statistics that John gave about 5 million votes, and then it was something like 16 were okay. So be sure to stand up against that. Go to 5 calls. Make sure you make phone calls to your legislature to say we do not support the SAFE Act. So far, it's been stopped by the Senate, but keep an eye. We also close the evening with, I'd like to remind you to finish up by filling out the little questionnaires which you got, which give us important feedback on how you experienced this meeting and what you'd like to see us do in the future. We really want to hear from you what you'd like to have us cover so that we can do that in the future. And especially ways we need you to step up, speak up, and volunteer. I also remind you there's information about how to get tickets or become a program sponsor for our benefit concert, Car Seat Blanton. David is back there waving the information. Please stop there to get your tickets, to find out how to do that, or to make a contribution. Our own incredible Get Out the Vote member, Lisa Lenzo, has packets of postcards that you can mail. We're now mailing to Michigan voters. So they are back there. Take some, you can write them out, send them in, helping other people to get out and vote. And please go to our website, SDAIndivisibles.org, to get more information about ways that you can participate to save this democracy. Make sure that you're signed up to get our newsletters so that you know what's coming up. There are also t-shirts available, ta-da! And all of that goes directly to support the work that we do. I hope that if you don't yet have a t-shirt, you will think about getting one for your whole entire family. Christmas isn't too far away, is it? Get a t-shirt. Thank you so much for joining us. You've already taken an important step by standing up and showing up. And I have no doubt that in the days ahead, you will be speaking up. Because people power makes democracy. See you all at upcoming events. Thank you.